Initial word mnemonic chants. This is a method that I invented about 20 or 25 years ago, and it's proved extremely successful for teaching the spelling of high frequency words and homophones. The difference between a mnemonic chant and an initial word mnemonic chant is that my chants actually begin with the word that you're trying to spell, and that is a huge difference because it is then possible to use this as a complete spelling system, and I've got pupils who have literally memorised hundreds. There's a little boy who could do 545 of these mnemonic chants in 1 hour, and that meant that he could then spell 545 words that he couldn't spell before. So they're very powerful and they last a long time in the memory. So to give you an example, if you work from a particular worksheet that has all the words listed on, then you give a spelling test. It's very simple to administer. Give a spelling test, and only ones that are misspelt will you then target for the initial word mnemonic chants. So as an example, let's imagine that this particular person had spelt the word come incorrectly. So I would simply take a piece of card, write the word come on the front, and then on the back, the chant for this is written at the top to allow space for a drawing underneath. Now, what I usually do for these chants, and this is what I think makes them so effective, is that I actually tell a little story. And so for this one, I'd be saying something along the lines of, there was a little girl called Mary, and she'd been quite ill for some time and hadn't had much of an appetite. And so her mother was very concerned that she was going to waste away, basically. So she was quite keen that when the little girl was over her illness, she would then start to eat. So she put some interesting food down on the table and then said to her, "Come on, Mary, eat." And that's the chant. And so by introducing that little story, then getting the child to actually engage with that story and then draw a picture appropriate to what the chant is, the next stage is then to actually say the chant out loud about 10 times. And that's really important because by saying these chants out loud, you're then rehearing your own voice back through your ears and it enters a different part of the brain. So by repeating these out loud, they then enter into the memory, and then once they're in the memory, they can then be slowed down and used to spell the individual letters and the whole word. Very, very powerful method. And so I use this all the time for all the high frequency words, and particularly for homophones. It is really effective because since the chant literally links to the word itself by being an initial method, then for instance, these two homophones here, the two ways of spelling bread, this is the bread that you eat, and that's the bread to do with breeding. The chant for this one, it's obviously linked to the meaning, bread rolls eaten at dinner. So there you've got the spelling and the meaning, and you draw the little picture associated with it. And then this one, to do with breeding, bred really exotic dogs. And then again, you have a little picture on the back to accompany that. So it's very effective. It's one of the most effective ways of actually retaining the individual spellings of homophones, because there are loads of homophones in the English language and they sort of stick. And many parents have actually said to me, those homophones have been really effective because I had problems with those in my mind with spelling them, and actually they've helped me enormously as well. So on my course, what you will get is a selection of different lists of words, homophones and also high frequency words. Also for every word there will be the appropriate chant, and also you have a series of what I call structured sentences to allow for, once the word has been used and learnt, to then be able to read those sentences and then possibly spell them as well, so that you're getting a complete tight system whereby you go from word up to sentences. When the spelling tests have been carried out and you've collected all of the words that have been misspelt and then given chants for them, people will then have a pile of little cards, and when they reach a certain level, I like to give them a reward of a certificate. So this is the kind of certificate that will be available on the course as well. And I like to give them initially when they've got 20, but then after that I wait till they've got 50, and then every 50 after that. So it's not uncommon for pupils to be able to retain well over 100 of these chants in their head, and so that's a very, very powerful way of learning to spell. And amazingly enough, having met some of my ex-pupils that I haven't taught for years, it's quite common for them to say to me, "Remember those chants that you gave me about 15 years ago?" And so, yes. And say, "Well, I can still remember them now, and I still sometimes need to use them." And that's the sort of thing that you're wanting. Far more powerful than many of the other methods of teaching spelling, really, that I've experienced. So I like to keep a check on how many chants any pupil has got at any one time, and so there's a little graph within the course whereby you can actually monitor how many they've got according to the time scale along the bottom there. And when they've got a lot, I tend to bring out the stopwatch and actually get them to start to say them really quickly, because what that means is that they are then having no hesitation. They're there, present in the memory and in the long-term memory, and the quicker that they can do them, the more they tend to be retained. Now, using little flashcards like these, strips of cards like these, I tend to use all the time. That's the way that I've used over the last 25 or so years. But I can quite see that if you're a teacher in a classroom situation, that may not be quite so convenient. It may be more convenient to use this self-same method, but not on strips of card, but on sheets of paper. And I would tend to give the same spelling test, find the ones that are wrong, locate the chants on the lists in the programme, and then actually write the words down that were misspelt in the middle to write the chants out associated with those words, and then that gives a little space in those windows there to actually write or draw a little picture. Now this is an example that I've taken from my book, because I do actually have a book published which contains 265 high frequency words, all with their chants and associated cartoon pictures. And so that's what one of the pages from my book looks like, but that's how you could make yours look for individual people. I mean, obviously the style of artwork will vary according to the individual pupils, but that's the layout. So it's word, chant and picture, and then all you've got to do is the same sort of thing, say the chant out loud many times to learn the chant. The picture links into the visual memory, the chant helps with the auditory memory, so you've got a completely multi-sensory approach to learning how to read and spell the word. So the first stage I will show, having done the spelling test and marked them. Each of these pupils has now been given a word that they haven't been able to spell correctly, and now we're going to start the process of actually learning right from the beginning. So you'll hear me telling a story, then they will draw the picture, and then they will say the chant out loud 10 times. Picture the scene: children's playground, lots of swings and a big slide, and then there's a group of mothers all standing talking in the corner of this playground, and close by one of the mothers is a little toddler. Now the mothers are so engrossed with their conversation that they don't realise this little toddler has wandered up, and he's wandered right across to the huge slide at the far side of the playground, far too big for him. This is for teenagers, and he's busy climbing to the top of the ladder of this big slide. Off he goes down the slide at high speed, and then he goes sailing off the end, over the fence and into the next field, and lands in a cow patch. Chant goes on enormous slide. So you draw your little picture of the big slide with this little toddler whizzing down it and sailing off the end. Using the 10 fingers on your hands to count, can you, in unison, say, goes on enormous slide? So 1, 2, 3, go!
Goes on enormous slide, 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 goes on enormous slide.
Right.
Go.
Okay, excellent. Right, now if I just give you a piece of paper now, all you're going to do now, you remember, is you slow the chant down, and then you're going to say it quietly out loud to yourself, but slowed down, and then spell the word several times using that chant. So it goes on enormous slide, goes on enormous slide, that kind of thing. So do a few of those. The next stage is when they have accumulated a few chants, we then get the stopwatch out, and then they start to say these as quickly as they possibly can, timing themselves at each stage, getting faster and faster, and that helps to embed the chants more firmly in the memory.
Roll over large Labrador. Beautiful eagle attacked uncle's turkey, it flew on the lorry. Mane appears never ending. Bough of unusually great holly. Their house explodes in Rome. Enough nails in uncle's garden hut. Half a large fish. Gone Northern Express. 2 orange Oliver. Doctor often catches tonsillitis on rounds. Pear eaten at restaurant. Break really abruptly, kitten escapes. Route of underground train ends. Fur interest rooks. None of Ned's escapes. Lock overflows, causing havoc. Caught animal up Granny's holly tree. 42 seconds.
The next stage will be for myself or somebody to test the chants by taking the cards away and simply just saying the word, and then the pupil then follows up by coming up with the chant. Roll.
Roll over large Labrador.
Caught.
Caught animal up Granny's holly tree.
Lock.
Lock overflows, causing havoc.
And then the final stage is to dictate some sentences. Usually I take 2 random chants, look at them, and then create a sentence involving these 2 words, dictate that sentence, and then get the pupil to write the sentence out. And then, of course, when they get to their chant words, to use the chant still within the context of the sentence, get to the end of the sentence, go back, underline the 2 chant words, and then just check, using the chant, that the words have been spelled correctly.
Hat. To. Break. Suddenly. As he went round the lock. Break really abruptly, kitten escapes.
My teaching programme obviously contains the mnemonic chant method, but it also contains the flashcard method. Now, the flashcard method is not my invention, I have to say this. This is something called the Orton-Gillian method that I was actually taught in at the Dyslexia Institute many years ago. But I've actually used these flashcards in a different way, and I've certainly created all my own worksheets associated with them. There are detailed instructions on the course on how to use each individual flashcard pack. There are 5 flashcard packs: the alphabet, consonant blends, long vowels, prefixes and suffixes, and there's a separate video giving detailed instructions for each one of these. However, I am aware of the fact that there are occasions where flashcards may not be all that popular because they are fiddly to deal with, and especially when you're dealing with lots of children in a classroom situation. So there are alternative ways of being able to use this self-same method, and I've devised this system whereby you can do the same instructions but using a sheet method instead of the flashcards. Just to simply show you how each of these flashcards were designed, I'm using the consonant blend pack as an example. A typical card would have the blend at the front in lowercase and uppercase. On the back is a keyword, and in the back, and in brackets, is the sound that the blend makes on the front. There's a deliberate space underneath because that's for a picture to be given. And so these again are very, very visual, using both visual and auditory methods to get into the memory. Now, what you can do if you don't want to use a flashcard system is to use this sheet method. Now, on this particular sheet method, everything that was or is in this pack is present here on that sheet. So we've got 58 consonant blends all listed. Now, because each card, of course, has a keyword on the back, there's another card that actually has that information. So you've got all the separate individual consonant blends with their individual keywords. So the system is relatively straightforward. All you do is you give a reading test by presenting that sheet and getting the pupil to go one by one through each of these. Any that they don't say correctly, put a little dot next to them, and then at the end you can express the result as a percentage using this thermometer method. And so whatever the percentage is, you actually colour in up to the appropriate point, and that's the starting point. Then you target all the ones that they got wrong, because they will have dots next to them, and by using this template that's again on the course, you then fill in all the individual blends that were incorrectly said, find and locate the keywords on the sheet and write those in with the phonic sound in brackets, and then this space here is for the pupil to draw a little picture. Once they've done all that, then they've got to learn it, and they learn it by simply saying the word followed by the sound of the blend out loud. So this full will be learned as flag, full, smile, sm, twin, tw, ant, nt, sulk, ulk. And this is carried out a few times, and then to test them, the first stage of testing will be to cover the words over. They've only got then the pictures to look at, so then they say what they remember the word to be, followed by the sound. And then the remaining stage of testing is to then cover the pictures. That's the next thing, cover the pictures, and then they've got to look at the words and read the words, followed by the sounds of the blends. And then finally, literally cover up the whole lot, and then what they're doing is simply now, hopefully, saying the blends appropriately. Full, sm, tw, nt, ulk, and they were all blends that they couldn't do before. So once that's been done, you then go back to the original sheet, retest again, and hopefully this time all the ones that were not clearly understood are now understood by that particular method. And then presumably and hopefully the scores have gone up, and you then enter those onto the thermometer. Ideally, we're aiming for 100% where they can get stars put on the top. Now, again, once 100% has been achieved, I like to bring out the stopwatch and actually time these blends being said. The best thing would be if the teacher were to do her own or his own timing and put the number down here, and then the aim is for the pupil to try and beat the teacher. And this is an example of a time sheet there, where gradually, bit by bit, the pupil is getting quicker. That's the teacher's timeline, and at this point, that's where they've beaten the teacher. It's always a good idea to have that method because it has a great sense of achievement when they've beaten the teacher. And once the blends have then been really thoroughly learnt, then it's the next stage, going from the blends to then words into which you can see the blends. So here is an example of a sheet of words where the blends are at the beginning of the word. So you simply take a green pen, because it's a green pack, and pick out the blends, and then once that's been analysed, hopefully now the pupil can then read all of these words. And they're the blends at the beginnings of the words. They're examples of words where the blends are at the end. And then here we've got an example where the blends are at the beginning and the end. So gradually the words are getting more and more complex. And so once that's understood and we've got all these read beautifully, then the final stage is to go and look at my structured sentences, where the sentences are mainly made up of consonant blend words. And they go along and they pick out the blends, and then they read the sentences, hopefully fluently by now. So it's the same stage. You go from pack, or in this case sheet, of blends through to the words, and then finally through to the sentences. And it's just a bit like going up the ladder of complexity. So you have seen the instructional videos, and you've got an idea now of how to use these methods. They are very simple to administer, very effective, so why don't you give them a try, because they might just make a huge difference to your particular child. If you need any further information, go to my website or contact me by the information that's going to appear at the end of this video.